Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Sean Wagoner. Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace consistently invite us to enter a meditative state. Whatever the medium, each piece seems to raise more question than provide answers. The artists, respected for their innovative work, have concluded the series for which they are most known, large-scale blown glass fruit and vegetable forms. Their subsequent work includes life-size figurative wood and glass sculptures, as well as outdoor bronze installations and glasswork that features blown vessels and cast panels with illustrations of the first facts of bird identification realized through applied glass powder drawings. Most recently, the artists have been working on their Botanicals, a body of work that preserves real flowers in composite and glass. Kirkpatrick and Mace have worked collaboratively for the past 47 years after meeting at Pilchuck Glass School in 1979. The artists have consistently explored seminal themes: principles of drawing as incorporated into glass, the metaphoric content of human relationship to nature, and the appropriation of materials to support a visual idea. They recently installed a large public art project at the Seattle Center in Seattle, Washington. Kirkpatrick, born in Des Moines, Iowa in 1952, and Mace, born in Exeter, New Hampshire in 1949, have exhibited, lectured, and taught extensively throughout the world. They taught for 12 years at Pilchuck Glass School. Their collaborative work is included in collections and museums around the world, including the Corning Museum of Glass, the Detroit Institute of Art, the Boston Museum of Fine Art, Hokkaido Museum in Japan, Museum of Art in New York, Musée des Arts Décoratifs, Lausanne, Switzerland, Seattle Art Museum, Toledo Art Museum, and the National Museum of American Art, Renwick Gallery, Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Mark Doty wrote in the introduction of the book Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace, "This might be the most complex yoking of all, the way that two sensibilities overlap, merge, separate, conflict, and resolve, a continuing dynamic, itself both unstable and solid, evolving, transforming materials and processes as it transforms itself." End quote. Kirkpatrick and Mace were recognized in 2019 for their outstanding achievement in the field of contemporary glass art by the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, and have been elected to the American Craft Fellows in 2005, interviewed for the Smithsonian Archives of American Art in 2006, and given the 2001 Chateau Saint Michel Lebensky Award by Pilchuck Glass School, honoring outstanding contemporary artists working in glass. Kirkpatrick served as a trustee on the board of Pilchuck Glass School for 16 years. Now the artists split time between a home and studio in Seattle, Washington, and a farm on the Olympic Peninsula near the Washington coast. Their current botanical sculptures grew out of a desire to capture the essence of a plant by preserving it through portraiture. Each plant is harvested as it shares its bloom, brought into the studio, deconstructed, dried, and reassembled. The specimen is then suspended within layers of composites and glass. The finished work has been recreated through the artist's hand and dependent on the artist's view of the specimen by observing in life the plant's structure. The result, a portrait of a flower. Of their botanical sculpture, Daniel J. Hinckley, plantsman, wrote, "The works of Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace capture the improbable, if not the impossible, the apprehension of not just a moment reflecting the magic and majesty of our natural world, but the abduction and amplification of a precise moment of perfection. To say that the paragon of their subjects has been frozen in time implies incorrectly that what you observe in their work is not simply an expiration and preservation of a plant at its floral zenith. These flowers embody the mystery and beauty, comprehended and embraced by the artist to such a degree that one might actually perceive its ultimate drop of petal, abscission of leaf, or growth of root." End quote. A selection of Kirkpatrick and Mace works is also on view now at the Corning Museum of Glass, Corning, New York, in Tough Stuff, Women in the American Glass Studio. The exhibition showcases the groundbreaking creators who shaped the past and future of glass art. Many thanks to the sponsors of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass: the Corning Museum of Glass, Wet Dog Glass, the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, and the Chrysler Museum of Art's Perry Glass Studio. To find out more about our sponsors, visit talkingoutyourglass.com, click on Episodes, Season 11, and Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace. Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora Mace, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm so excited that the two of you came on. As you know, I've been trying to get you on the show forever, and no library of glass conversations would be complete without you. So thank you so much.
Well, we're happy to be here finally. We're happy.
I wanted to ask each of you, what's your earliest memory of being impacted or influenced by an art object?
You know, that's one of those really interesting questions that each time you might be asked that, it would be a different answer. But the first thing that comes to my mind is a print that my mother had when I was a child by our front door of our living room. I grew up in Iowa in the 50s, and it was an Utrillo, who was a French painter, print that I'm sure she got at the local A&P. You know, it wasn't the real thing. But I think, and it was a very atmospheric painting of a sort of an outdoor street scene. And I think that it got into my consciousness because growing up in the 50s, there was a specific culture. You know, there was the Mickey Mouse Club and Bonanza and all these things. And I knew that that was outside of the culture of my childhood. And so it made an impression on me.
Flora, how about you?
Mine was in high school going to the Boston Museum of Art. I couldn't believe it. It was quite an adventure. I grew up on a farm, and there was always things to do there, so there wasn't a lot of traveling. So really, the high school art teacher really opened a lot of kids' eyes. So that was mine. And realized that there was a life beyond.
Flora, born in Exeter, New Hampshire, you studied glass at the University of Illinois Champaign and University of Utah Salt Lake City for your graduate work in glass. What attracted you to, and what were your early goals with the material?
I went to the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana for sculpture, and the sculpture lab was slightly off campus. It was, 3D sculpture. And after I arrived, they said that they were going to build a glass studio. And I had just come back from Norway, where I had seen glass being blown. And I couldn't believe that they were thinking about building a studio because no one knew how to do anything. And there was an opportunity to give it a try. Really, we were all just crazy beginners with no real instruction. So it was like, get the furnace or ceramic kiln really hot and melt down some glass and try to get it out of the furnace. I think that's why I started doing thread drawings, because that's the only thing I could do is pull threads out of the furnace. And Illinois had a lot of great buildings that were degrading, and they had glass panels on the side of the buildings, and those chunks of colored glass were just amazing because we had no access to color. In fact, we didn't have a lot of access to even clear glass. We'd melt down mayonnaise bottles or any kind of bottles that we could find, which posed a problem with compatibility. We didn't know about compatibility or color or any of that. But because I could weld, I could try to make equipment for what we needed. And then we went on. And Joel Myers he was teaching about 45 minutes away at, I'm not sure what school it was, but Joel really realized that all the schools could exchange and equipment. And because he used to work at a glass facility in the East, he brought some of those people out to help us.
I did a
So
podcast interview with Joel last year, and I was amazed at how much he remembers about this time. I mean, he remembers every little detail. I think it was a very special time for him.
it was a really great, and he was really, I would have really gotten bogged down if it wasn't for Joel. He brought me to the first glass conference. Yeah, he said, if you have any problems at this school, transfer to mine. I'll take anybody on. He had quite a body of students that really went places, but I stayed at Illinois.
He would have taught at Illinois State University, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Was he a little more open to working with women than some of the other contemporaries of his of the day?
Oh, absolutely. It was
He
like,
he
let's go
seemed like
for
that wasn't an
yeah,
issue for him.
it was not an issue. In other schools, it was a big problem.
Yeah.
Yes. No, he was really good, really open. He saw that many of the students had ideas, interests, tried to help them blossom.
Joey, born in Des Moines, Iowa, you earned your BFA in drawing from University of Iowa, Iowa City, and began working with glass at Iowa State University, Ames. What attracted you to a three-dimensional medium, and in what ways were you working with glass early on?
Well, I think that historically, most people from my generation who ended up working in glass, a lot of them started in ceramics, and I was in ceramics. And at that time, think about it, in the 70s, glass was such a small beginning thing that there would be a little glass studio next to the big ceramic studio, because the equipment was similar. You needed the propane and the gas and everything. And so, having walked past that, um, as a ceramicist, there's just such an attraction to the physicality of it. And at the time, there was such a mystery to it, because you didn't really know what it was. I mean, this was people were making their way from into something from nothing. And so the attraction was the physicality of it, and the sort of the newness of it. So really, my early work was just learning. As Flora said, everybody was just learning how do you make a vessel. I mean, I think the cool thing about that era that's different from today is that it was artists from different materials. Like, I came from a two-dimensional background mostly, and ceramics brought their artistic uh, visions to glass. And now I think it's different, because people know how to blow glass, so they're bringing glass to glass, if you will. And I think that's a big difference. But my early stuff was just trying to learn how to keep the piece on the end of the pipe.
It was.
So, how and when did each of you end up at Pilchuck? And what were your early impressions of the campus and what Dale Chihuly was establishing there? It was so unique.
I ran into Dale Chihuly in 1974 at the University of Utah. He was teaching, and I had to get out of Illinois because I needed to see more of what was going on. And there were Dale. The idea of the class was, there were so many people in other fields, and that's what I always liked. There were ceramicists, there were painters that came to Utah, and it was a 4-week class, and we built a glass studio on the loading dock that loaded people, tourists, to go up on the mountain. So when they loaded, we were blowing glass right there. It was really fun. And we built a studio, and Dale loved the idea that we were exploring all the other classes too. And Dale wanted me to, at the end of those weeks, wanted me to go to Pilchuck. But my sister came and went to one of the other classes. And so we were going to see the country. So I made a commitment to her. So I said, Dale, I can't do it this go round, but if there's anything you want, I will send it to you. So Dale and I got into a routine. He would call me up and say, I need this or that. And I would send it
A drawing.
a drawing or a sketch, or we would try to figure out one of Dale's ideas. But it wasn't until 1979 that I finally went to Pilchuck. He wanted me to go, but I never did. I felt I didn't know enough. When I got to Pilchuck, I was just amazed at the place and the equipment and the end of the road situation of experimentation. And Joey's right. In the beginning, all the students that came were sculptors and painters and architects. And they had a vision of what they wanted to maybe explore, but they had a portfolio of everything else that they had done. And so we would, as a group, look over the ideas and try to expand them into a glass.
Joey, how about you? When did you get to Pilchuck?
I got to Pilchuck in 79, and I know you're going to ask how the two of us met, so I'll jump ahead to that.
Okay, perfect.
I was in Iowa still. I was working at the Des Moines Arts Center, and I'd worked there since I was in grade school, really, and I was teaching there, and it's a fantastic art museum. And I walked into the library one day, and there was a poster of Dale's work on the wall, and I just thought I need to go there. Again, I was a complete beginner glassblower. I just started at school, and I hardly knew my way. And so I called up Pilchuck and said, I don't have the money, but I really want to come to school there. And they said, if you send us $25, we'll hold a spot for you. And I got a job during the summer climbing trees and maintaining trees, and made my $75 to come to Pilchuck. And I went to Pilchuck to study under Dale, and Flora was his teaching assistant. And I told him, I want to put my drawings on glass. And he literally just kind of went like that and said, Flora's the person in the world that can put drawings on glass. And so really we started working together. We weren't collaborating, but she was helping me figure out ways to get the sort of portfolio that I brought under my arm on pieces. And she was much better glass blower, much more advanced glass blower. And I was more interested in not blowing glass, but seeing my artistic, vision on glass.
So what was it when you met? What happened? The stars aligned.
Yeah, the stars for sure aligned. I think it was a merging of two people who really were in, very interested in making our work and having that be the priority in our lives. And we were both very curious, and we wanted to find new ways to say things that we wanted to say. And I think we took advantage of each other's abilities. Like, we'll probably talk about this throughout our time together, but, Flora is a highly skilled technician, and she can make anything. She makes her own nuts and bolts. She can invent things to put our work together. And my thing then was, as I said, I just had a vision about a drawing or an idea that I wanted to get into 3D. And so that was a perfect mix at the time. So I could lay something out, and she could say, well, here's a way to do it. And I think that it just, like you said, I think it would just worked at the time.
And at that time, everybody that showed up at Pilchuck or any place where you could blow glass, most of the guys bonded. It was kind of like the boys club. And it was like, okay, well, we're left over. We could work together. And that's kind of the way it was. There was very few women in the beginning, at least when we were there. Maybe the first 4 years there were
Mhm.
more women. But Joey had some beautiful, beautiful drawings that she wanted to put into glass. And reluctantly, I said, I'm not going to teach you the technique that I do because it would destroy her drawing hand. When she draws it, like she goes into a state of drawing that, yeah, it's it's if you've been around an artist that draws, they go into a state, and it was like if she has to be worrying about a torch and about a thread, and you can't do that. So I went to the hardware store and I said, maybe she can work with a cold line. So I got some wire and I handed her wire and pliers, and I said, this might work out as a technique for you.
It was pretty ambitious to try to put drawings in glass at that time.
Yes.
I think that as we look back, when you're doing it, you don't think, oh, this is really going to be historical. But I do think in terms of contemporary art, I think the merging of the drawings and the glass that weren't painted on. I mean, you can always paint on glass, but I do think that it led to a different direction in the contemporary studio glass movement. And we were surrounded by people who were also experimenting. And so there was a lot of give and take in that department. You didn't feel like you were the only one beginning from scratch.
Oh, everybody was, yeah, a wing and a prayer. Because not only your ideas, you were dealing with furnaces and fire. And Pilchuck at the very beginning had square glory holes, so the heat didn't swirl. It kind of went boink, boink. So we would at night we went in one night and totally destroyed a glory hole and made it round. We went and got some bricks and did a barrel, and the school administration went absolutely crazy. But that's what we had to do, is to figure out the equipment and the art as we went along.
Yeah. We'll return to Joey Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the Corning Museum of Glass. Be among the first to experience a powerful new exhibition celebrating the female artists who revolutionized American studio glass. Tough Stuff, Women in the American Glass Studio, opened May 16th, showcasing the groundbreaking creators who shaped the past and future of glass art. Plan your visit and explore the stories, artistry, and journeys behind this landmark exhibition at cmog.org. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Wet Dog Glass. In business since 1996, Wet Dog Glass delivers unsurpassed value to glass studios like the Corning Museum of Glass and others around the globe. Offerings include turnkey hot glass studio equipment, studio planning consultation, and technical support. Wet Dog Glass, your studio's best friend. For more information, visit wdg-us.com. This episode is sponsored by the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. AACG is a leading resource for glass collectors, artists, gallerists, museum personnel, educators, and others on all things related to glass art. Its mission is to further the development and appreciation of art made from glass. It also provides a place for the glass community to have a robust conversation around glass art through its weekly virtual programs and provides grants and scholarships. Membership gives glass lovers access to many members-only benefits. For more information and to become a member of AACG, go to aacgglass.org. And now, we return to Joey and Flora. Now, the two of you actually lived on Pilchuck campus from like 1981 to 1985, and you built your own house there?
Mhm.
Yes.
We did.
Tell us about that.
Well, once we got there and we we realized the short history of Pilchuck. It started in 71. We were there in 79. We realized that this was something very special, and we wanted to, when they came in 71, they had tents and they all built their own dwellings. I wouldn't call them houses. So that was very appealing to us. And we also wanted to stay in the off season and make work, and which hadn't quite been done before. And so we decided to build our own house, and we had to ask permission from John Hallberg, who gave the property to the school. And they had a couple of rules. The one of them was that you couldn't see the house. You can build it, but you can't see the house. They didn't want you to build it so that it could be seen from any road, because they were afraid of what it was going to look like,
And also there was no building permits.
And so we built it in like, I don't know, 2 weeks maximum. We didn't have any electricity. We carried all the equipment down every day, the lumber every day down this road. And when we did finish it, John brought the director, Alice Rooney, down, and a whole group
the
of
entire board.
And we were so nervous because it's up on posts. We were so nervous that when they got in, we got out, because we were thinking, man, there's going to be a headline like Pilchuck house collapses under the Pilchuck board, gets wiped out. So, it was a great opportunity. It was a great experience. And we lived there round season for, as you say, 4 years.
The difference in weather between, I grew up in New England and Joey in Iowa, winters were very severe. And here in the Northwest, really, you can pretty much be outside year round, and there's not a lot of shoveling of snow. And it was like, God, you could work year round here without doing all the other things that we New Englanders have to, like shovel snow and get rid of ice. And so we gave it a try, and we were the first year-round residents at Pilchuck that weren't employees. And we built a little shop, and we had to survive the first winter. And then everybody said, God, what a great idea.
We shared the hot shop. We shared the hot shop with Bill Morris's team, and
not the first year,
but when we did. And like I said, we shared ideas, and he was making his bones then, and we'd run back and forth with glass at the end of our pipe and say, does this look like a bone? Does this look like a piece of fruit? So it was inspiring to feel like you were part of something that was growing.
And probably one of the most important things of the period and what Dale was trying to do is that he brought all these artists from all around the world that you guys got to meet and become friends with and work with. Talk about the impact of doing that.
I think that was the genius of Dale's educational side, was that he wasn't the kind of guy who got on the pipe and showed you how to make a vessel. He wanted to bring artists in, and then the students and the rest of us would watch their approach to work. And I think that's really a great way to learn. We got together with Dale, I think in the mid 80s, and started this program, the Artist in Residence program. And as you say, we brought in Chris Wilmarth, Judy Pfaff, Linda Benglis, Jim Dine,
John Toriano.
And we, along with Billy, we were like their translators. They would come, just like I came with my drawings as an idea, and Flora translated them onto glass. They came with their ideas, because again, glass was in its infancy. And so they wouldn't, Linda Benglis wanted to tie glass into knots. Think about taking a long piece of glass and trying to tie it, and it would get stuck if it touched itself as it went through the loop. So just the approach of trying to make something so new and a really new material to everybody, that it was educational for everybody. And I think that it also helped cross the boundary of bringing the fine arts. I know there's that whole thing about crafts and fine arts, but it really did bring the fine arts to the material, and then the material became fine art.
So, in terms of your own work, what's the most important thing that came out of the Pilchuck years?
Experimentation.
Yeah. The opportunity to have the time to experiment. I
Yeah.
mean, we lived out of our house. We kind of in trade for helping. John Hallberg used to say, cut down all the alder trees. I don't want them growing around the buildings. I mean, we helped kind of contribute as a community, but we were given an opportunity to just be and experiment and make sure our work was in a place that was I don't want to say complete, but was thought through for showing, for getting out in the world. So it was an incredible opportunity to just to experiment.
Experimentation and working on ideas with other people is very, very exciting.
It's been said that Lino Tagliapietra had never seen a woman blowing glass when he arrived at Pilchuck for the first time. What was that like?
Is that true?
Well, first, I want to say that when Lino was invited to come to Pilchuck, and he got to the Seattle airport, SeaTac, and he got a cab and said Pilchuck School, Stanwood. He had no idea where it was, and he arrived. The taxi guy got him there.
Which is like an hour and a
An
half.
hour. Lino had no American money, so we had to do a fund drive, fund me, as everybody chipped in to pay Lino's taxi fare. But once Lino arrived, because he could only speak really Italian, he couldn't believe all the young people blowing, because he started blowing glass when he was like 12. And as a young person in Venice, you didn't really sit at the master's bench until you were in your 20s or 30s. And here we were all, mid 20s, and we were trying to make our own work, thinking about our work, making big things. Lino had never seen that because everybody there that was blowing glass had years of skill and apprenticeships before they got there. And so to see women blow glass.
I can remember one time when Flora and I were blowing and Lino was walking past the pad, and I said, Lino, come on down here and help us. Flora was so mad at me because here the master, to be invited, and then to be invited to work with women. I think that Lino's coming changed two huge things in the studio glass movement. One was for him, because as Flora said, he wasn't really, he worked in a factory, so he didn't make his own work. He made what the factory was making pretty much. So it allowed him to step out and make his own work. And it also changed for many the direction of glass, where so many glass blowers all of a sudden wanted to work the Italian way. And that was sort of what a lot of people aspired to. And so I think it really changed the direction of the studio glass movement.
Lino not only taught he didn't necessarily teach us about glass. He did the glass and we watched intently. And our unskilled students and teachers tried to help Lino work on pieces. And Lino was not used to having work brought to him that wasn't perfect bits, perfect blown shapes. And he had to try to roll with whatever he got. And it was quite amazing. He wasn't always so happy when he received a bit that wasn't exactly right on or the right temperature. But he came back he really found it exciting and started coming back every year.
he really evolved as an artist and as a person in a
And a chef, teaching the men how to cook Italian food. Um, yes, and then finally Lino's wife came to Pilchuck, and she said it was the first time she had ever watched him blow glass.
Wow.
Because women, it was just a job. They didn't go to the factory and watch their significant others work.
Yeah. That's Lena, right?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, along those same lines, when you first started teaching there, your students were exclusively men. Was that challenging?
It, it wasn't, because I think it was it, everyone was such a neophyte. I think I don't
Yeah.
really I do think it evolved over the years. First, we had almost all men, and if not all boys. And then by the time 14 years later, when we stopped teaching, all our students were women pretty much. And that spoke to the broader issues of women having the chance,
Opportunities.
the opportunity before they got to Pilchuck to learn about glass and whatnot. So I wouldn't say it was challenging. I would say that the aspirations of men and women who were our students were different. And though, again, partly because of Lino, partly because of the hierarchy of the gaffer system, I think our male students were much more interested in learning the techniques of being a great Venetian glass blower, and the technique just to be very highly technical. And I do think, I mean, this is a bit of a generalization, I understand, but I think the women weren't so inclined to want to be the best glass blower and make the best goblet, or the Zanfirico goblet, or the highly skilled goblet. I think more women were, gosh, I hesitate to say idea oriented, but the skill part wasn't their primary focus.
And I have to say that maybe we succumbed to that. We had ideas as artists with the material, and we realized that there were young people that all they wanted to do is become technicians, and really good technicians. So we would work with them with our ideas. And Paul de Soma, Bill Morris helped us immensely, Boyd Sagiki, and many, many others. Karen Willenbrink worked with us.
Paul Stokes.
Yeah, Pat Davidson. All these people that we worked with, we knew that they were going to go do their own thing, and each one of them had their kind of own special direction. So if we were working on a project, we would try to find someone that we thought could utilize what we were going to progress with. And they would work with us for a short time and then had to go do their own work.
So when and why did the two of you consider collaborating on making work, and talk about your collaboration, how it's evolved over the years?
It has evolved.
What is it, 40? How many years?
Over 40 years. I'm not going to count. We're counting aloud. From meeting at Pilchuck in 79, we went our separate ways for a very short period of time, and Flora called me up and said, do you want to come and let's work together? But it wasn't about collaboration. It was just, everybody needs a helper, in glass. And we went to the East Coast, and we started becoming, what do you call it?
Visiting artists.
Visiting students at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. And we lived in, where did we live? New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And we would go down a couple of times a week. Flora was doing so much work for Dale, like doing the drawings for his cylinders and whatnot, that it kind of gave us an in at RISD. And we became what they called special students.
Yeah.
And, really the decision to collaborate initially, it was based on commerce in a weird sort of way, because we were making my work with the drawings on them. the wire drawings on them. And a gallery from Boston came in. Well, I was just an absolute no name. I mean, nobody knew who I was at all. But Flora had had a one woman show in New York at Heller, and she was a known artist and that kind of thing. And they were really interested in the work that they saw on the tables that we were making, the wire drawing cylinders. And so it was kind of like we looked at each other and thought, oh, collaborate, because they weren't going to want my name. They didn't know my name, or that's what we thought. And then we also recognized that even though, glass blowing is such a team thing, that we were both investing our time, our energy, our passions, our curiosity, all of that, and that it just made sense to co-sign it. And I can't say that it was a welcomed thing by many people, because there's that whole image of I've said this a million times, but the poor starving artist living alone, and you can't, it's a very singular thing. But we were bringing, as I mentioned earlier, very different aspects to the work, and I think it made the work better. I think it made the work cleaner. And when I say cleaner, I mean it was more looked at by two people, and we kind of got the riffraff off of it, if you will, if that makes sense. So we decided at RISD to collaborate.
We'll return to Joy Kirkpatrick and Flora C. Mace in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the Chrysler Museum of Art's Perry Glass Studio, presenting a masterclass, Flameworking Basics and Beyond with Sally Prash. Explore the fascinating techniques of scientific glass blowing as you create a series of unique projects. Participants will learn essential skills, including ring, blind, and side seals, and apply them directly to individual work, scaled to each student's experience level. Along the way, students will create imaginative objects such as musical instruments, flowers, candle holders, and both solid and hollow chain. This hands-on course offers a rare opportunity to combine precision scientific techniques with artistic expression in glass. 1 year flameworking experience recommended. For more information or to register, visit chrysler.org. If you enjoy this online library of conversations with the world's best glass artists, please consider making a one-time donation. Visit talkingoutyourglass.com and click on Donate to support the continued documentation of glass and glass artists. And now, back to Joy and Flora. Flora, talk a little bit about your one-person show in, I guess that would also be a solo exhibition, at Heller. What year was that, and what body of work did you show?
It was cylinders, and it had figurative, nude figurative drawings on it. And
that were crushed glass powder.
yeah, it was the first time I started going around to the buildings at graduate school. A lot of the buildings were falling down and the glass blocks were falling off. And the glass was along the roadside. So I'd pick it up and I would start crushing it. And then I started using beer bottles and crushing that up. Any kind of colored glass I would start. It's before companies crush glass. So I would do a thread drawing and then fill it in with crushed powders. And Heller offered me a show, and I didn't really want to go to New York. I mean, I'm a farm kid. And my sister said, "Oh, come on, let's go to New York." And so went and had the show in New York, and it was very successful. And I was, oh God, it's not my thing. I will make the work, but the other side of it, I didn't enjoy that much.
It wasn't just super exciting to have a solo exhibition in New York City?
It was a good thing to do. But there were all these expectations. What's the next show gonna be? How are you gonna? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was about making the work. Probably that's my one downfall. I enjoy making the work, trying to figure it out. I'm not so into the showing side of it.
Got it. So, in terms of your collaboration, how is it different today than it was when you first started, or is it?
Oh yeah. I mean, you evolve over 40 years for sure.
Joey has some incredible ideas, and I always said if she even passed away, I still have 100 years more of work.
Oh, good. That's good to know.
Um,
It-
Joey is first class artist.
when we started, as I mentioned earlier, really it was I had these ideas and Flora helped me put them on glass. And so she was the technician and I was sort of the idea person. But then as we got into it, obviously, and as the work evolved and as it got more complicated and as it became sculptural, it kind of evened out. It was both our ideas. And that's when I think, the ideas really were so looked at by two very strong personalities that the work isn't simple, but it simplified the vision of the work because it was so uh, gone through our sort of thinking. And so, we both were got, I do the technical as Flora tells me how to do it. But so we both kind of evened out on our ideas and technical. And now I would say we both have gone to, I'm doing a lot of painting now, and Flora's doing a lot of work on her flowers. So we've kind of gone back to the beginning where she's doing the more of the technical stuff and I'm doing more of the idea things, putting the composition of the flowers together.
Many of us through the whole 40 something years, Joey will start doing something just arbitrarily. And I'll go, God, great idea.
No, nothing's arbitrary. Wait,
Yeah.
no.
Well, the bird pages. We were, our studio was right on the canal in Seattle, and she would go down to the, 15 steps in the studio and start painting all the migrating birds. And I said, oh God, just show those. And she goes, we can't show those. Everybody's, into just painting birds. She said, well, let's see if we can come up with a new way of envisioning the birds. So we came up with the bird pages, casting sheet, blocks of glass with powders. So we figured out that technique. And then we needed an element of more three-dimension. And so we started putting sticks together to look like birds.
I mean, everything starts with a drawing for me. Everything.
Yes.
And a drawing comes out of an idea. So, I mean, I hate to keep saying idea, but everything for me starts with an idea. And then you have to put it on paper somehow to just flesh out the idea. And then it sort of goes to the next step. But that's sort of how we work.
In an odd kind of way, it's the way Pilchuck started. You have a bunch of artists that have ideas and everybody works together and see if there's a place for it to go. And that's what we do year in and year out. And it isn't always smooth. Joey will come up with a great idea and I'll go, oh no, I can't do that. And she goes, well, think about it. And
I've learned to be very patient.
And I'll regret that she came up with a new idea. And it was like, wow, I wonder if we can do that. And that's the way it's worked. So we've developed many techniques to explore ideas. And I find that the fun part.
So you opened your studio in 1990 in Seattle. What was that like and what were you making at that time? Was it a difficult transition to start running your own place?
Yes. Well, glass is an expensive material.
Yeah.
And then you add a studio, square footage, and then you add the fire department and I won't say employees because anybody that worked with us was only for, a month or two, and they had to have their own business license because I knew that they were going to go and do their own thing. And then we had, shipping. Yeah, lots of, it's inexpensive.
I mean, just it adds a layer of babysitting that you didn't have when you didn't have a hot shop. But again, it gives you time, like that time at Pilchuck we described, being that this was our own personal studio, it gives us time to experiment without anybody watching. And
Yeah.
the first big body of work, I might be jumping out of sequence for you with this, but the first body of work that we made out of there were the bird pages. And they were so different. And they were such a new way for us to think about our work that it took time to figure it out. And one of the things that takes time for us and for me that's so amazing about our work that I enjoy so much is that the bird pages and the wire drawing cylinders, you're taking an idea, as I've said, that you put on paper, and then you're translating it to a material that you can't touch. And my goal always is that I want the piece to still look like it was made by my hand or Flora's hand, and so that it isn't a generic image that reflects your hand, Sean. Do you see what I mean? It's
Yes.
personalized. And so I've always felt really good about how we've been able to go through all these very technical things, but the end result looks very simple in a weird sort of way, and it looks very direct from the artist's hand. And that's been a really important part of our work.
And that as a glass artist, you should be able to, two ways, do a drawing, a sketch of some, and think about having another person make that piece, whether it's a scale or idea. So whenever we try to have a show, it's very important to show the drawings or the development in that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's putting that 2D and 3D together and forming the glass object. Or how many different ways can we deal with glass? For every time there is a new set of ideas.
So, what were the doll drawings and when were those created?
Those grew out of the wire drawing cylinders. The initial wire drawing cylinders that we started at Pilchuck, made at RISD, and then made at Pilchuck as we moved to Pilchuck were almost self-portraits. They were just line drawings of figures. And the one thing I had brought to Pilchuck initially under my arm, as we always say, was a series of drawings on paper of dolls that I had inherited from my teaching at the Des Moines Art Center. One of the other teachers gave it to me. And as a child, I never played with dolls. I mean, I was a total tomboy.
I didn't either. I made clothes for my dolls. I should have been a
that's right.
fashion designer.
Flora made clothes out of her mouse pelts, but that's another story for dolls. But so when I'd gotten this collection of vintage dolls that were very ethnically diverse, I felt like they each had a persona that I felt like you could project a personal persona on them. And so we started making the drawings, and Flora could use her technique and fill the wire in with the glass color. So they became very fabric oriented. They were very detailed and whatnot. And then often they were set on a piece where there'd be sort of a confrontation. And I think that they each became very personality driven. And it just seemed like a way to, when I'm sitting here thinking about a lot of our work, it is about, or it turns out that the subject matter is somewhat gender specific. You think of girls playing with dolls, but we've taken it in a way that isn't gender specific. If you see what I mean, and it's not about playing with dolls, but I just saw them as setting up these sort of dioramas of persona,
Mhm.
and that was really interesting.
Describe and discuss your large still life sculptures.
Those grew out of, again, an evolution of an idea. We started making the fruit life size to put into the wood and glass sculpture when it was dealing with sort of, we went through this whole period where we were dealing with the figure or the human's juxtaposition to nature. And remember, we were living at Pilchuck out in the country. We live on a big farm, piece of property. We were very much always sort of keyed into our relationship with nature, and we were making this work that was using the idea of the harvest, fruit as the harvest, and talking about the cycles and seasons of nature. And so that the fruit, when it was small, was a symbol. Didn't matter that a pear was a pear or that an apple was an apple.
Because a lot of times we didn't even put color on them. They were white.
Exactly. Or blue.
Yeah.
But then as it evolved, we decided that okay, we're dealing with this thing that is available to you in everyday life. And we wanted to blow up that symbol and make it more confrontational so that it represented itself now all of a sudden. It wasn't necessarily a symbol anymore.
Women could only paint.
Yeah, right. Well, that goes back to what I just said a minute ago about gender issue. But so we really wanted to talk about the appreciation of something in everyday life that in my lectures, I always say, I love Jasper Johns had this quote about making work that you don't have to say, what is it? You have to say, why is it? And I think that people look at the fruit, big fruit, and go, well, why? And the reason is appreciation or recognition, or it's a portrait of a piece of fruit.
Were those difficult to make?
Yes.
Well, they were, but Joey figured out how, because she was a painter, how to crush glass and work on, yes, another technique of crushing the glass, putting layers of color, of different colors. So it's almost like pointillism to give you a vibrant color. And yes,
I really used my knowledge as a painter, as Flora just said. Like, let's say if you were making a red apple, you couldn't put translucent colors of red because the light would just go through them and it would read black. So I had to think, okay, what do I do when I paint? I paint watercolor on a white piece of paper. So let's say make a big red apple or a big purple eggplant, I had to start with white on the inside of the piece so that the light would go through it and reflect back the colors that I then, as Flora said, dusted on top. So it was really like painting on glass in the sense that I thought about how I would do it as a painter. But the real challenge was, and this is where Bill Morris and his team were instrumental. We always made our own fruit. We were our team, Flora and I, but we decided when we wanted to make them big, he offered to help us. And when you think about it, I think we started making them in 1989. And at that time, that was really big work to blow. Now they blow gigantic things. I mean, the techniques have changed, the equipment has changed. But at the time, the challenge was the scale and the time that it took to cover the pieces in their color.
And when we started doing the fruit, there were no powder. You couldn't go to a glass place and get powdered glass. They didn't make it. So we had to make all our own powder. So we'd take a rod of color, get it really hot and throw it in cold water and it would explode. And then we'd sit with a hammer and beat it to a pulp. And then companies in Europe, our distributor, started going to the company and say, any of your broken rods, I'll take. And he brought them to the United States and powdered them. And then everybody had access to this brand new way of dealing with glass. It was all powdered and so many more things you could do with it. So one thing led to another thing, which developed a company that was just making rods that now made powder and threads. They started pulling threads like the Venetians did. So each technique for each idea
is invented, really.
Yeah.
So we touched a little bit on the bird pages earlier. And Joey, you once said there's a relationship between ornithology and the human desire to name everything. What is that relationship? And talk about that body of work a little bit.
I've really studied ornithology and I love birding. Now, I'm not the kind of person that makes the list and I need to have a certain number, but I've watched birds ever since my dad took me out bird watching as a kid. And I'm in my reading, I have looked at a lot of illustrators that talk about the first facts of presenting a bird and how to learn how to identify a bird. And think about a field guide. It's on a white piece of paper. If a warbler is in a green leaf tree, I can't say, Sean, that's yellow and blue, because the reflection of the green changes it. So how to learn is to put it on white paper. And that was sort of the basis of a field guide. And it occurred to me that the bird doesn't know what its name is, and it doesn't care what its name is. And I wanted to make a body of work where we made the viewer be human or experience that humanness, which is, I love to show the bird pages in a line. And so the viewer goes, oh, that's what a barn, you're reading. Every bird page had the name of the bird on it. And that Flora wrote with her cane drawings, her thread drawings. And so as you go along, oh, that's what a barn owl looks like. Oh, that's what a Western tanager looks like. That is the human impulse. And the reason that the pages had the clear four corners was I thought of them literally as a page out of a field guide. We put them on clear so that they wouldn't have the reflection of other colors to interfere with the identification. And how they were made, again, Flora figured this out, but she would give me a metal plate and to a specific size, and I would sit for hours with she made me these wonderful little sieves, and I would take the dust powders, kind of like reverse laying down color, and I would put, I would dust the piece. How would I say that? I would drop the dust down in the wing bars and the eye, and I would slowly cover it. So I had to remember where everything was underneath.
So she had beautiful drawings of the bird, plus little identification penciled in.
I had to keep track of where every color was and whatnot. So then when that piece was finished, the dust drawing was finished after 20, 25 hours, we would take the metal plate and put it into the hot shop on a hot plate, and we would heat up the powder. And then next to it, Flora rigged up a wonderful system where there was a frame that we would ladle, 2,400 degree. I hope this isn't too detailed, is it?
No, I love this stuff.
Okay. We would ladle the hot glass into a frame. And as it started to cool, we would pick it up and it would start to slump out of the frame. So we would have to turn it over so it would start to slump the other way and slowly set it on top of the powder drawing and hope that the two would fuse.
It's like a print technique.
It was printing. It was really printmaking. And if you turned it back over and the face was left on the plate because that one spot wasn't hot enough, the whole thing would go. But
we did 90 of those.
We made 90 different birds in all different poses.
Wow. Over 3 years.
Yeah. And then Flora had to make all the stands, which took another probably a year or so. But I just love the idea of the collection that that really again was just making people experience themselves being human.
We had one in our studio here, and a woman came and she had her dog, and the dog went absolutely crazy with this bird.
Yeah, it did. But you know, uh, we did this book, and our interviewer happened to be my sister. Asked, you know, so much of our work was figurative, and how does the birds fit into that? And the bird is one image, not even with flowers, which we're making now so much, but the bird is an image where we humans project our humanness. Like, you know, think of all the proverbs like, I want to be free as a bird, or a bird in the hand. So it's birds are sort of, I don't want to say they're metaphors, but they're subjects that receive projection of humanness, if you will. And that always really appealed to me, that there was sort of a dual thing going.
It's really nice to hear about the process, actually, because I wondered, is this painted? Are these cast? I didn't really understand how they were made when I saw them. So it's great. It's great to know. And it's
They're
much
all
more
glass.
complex.
Yeah, they're all glass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I would work a week, literally a week, to make 5 drawings if I could, 5 powder plates. And then we would spend one day, and we had a wonderful team of Paula Stokes, Ann Welch, and my sister Tracy Kirkpatrick. And then we would spend one day casting in that frame and picking up which piece. And if we were lucky, we'd get 2 or 3 good ones. And then I would just, from the end of the day, I'd walk back over to my little, you know,
in your chair,
my bird world, and I would start hoping to get 5 more done in a week. And so it was an intense time, but you know, it's the kind of work that I love doing so much that if I think about it, I miss doing it. But we keep moving on from one series to the next.
Yeah, and probably by having 2 of us, one of us will be reluctant and the other one will go, we could do this. We could figure this out. So we're back and forth with ideas and directions.
I can remember one time at the very beginning of the bird pages that we picked one up, and Flora had to figure out a way to make a flat punny, because they're like so the punny can't be round. It had to fit the scale of the page. And she took it to the glory hole, and it fell on the ground and broke. And this was very at the beginning. I thought, man, that was a long 20 hours just gone down the drain. And I remember thinking, all I want is just to maybe make 5 of these. If we could get 5 good ones, I'll be satisfied. And I mean, you kind of have to keep talking yourself into, we can keep going. Here's a goal, and then here's a goal. And then, as Flora said, we made 90 of them in the end.
Yeah, but over 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the technique would change, and Joey would have another drawing going, and I go, God, I can't believe that. Wow. We could do that one now.
You mean that bird?
No, something else that related to. That's how we grew.
Yeah, totally.
And Joey would set up criterias. I don't want to see any nuts and bolts, and I don't want to, and I'd go, oh, come on. She pushed me to be a better artist. So we each challenged each other, and it isn't always so pretty. We have two different studios, and sometimes you don't want her to come in, or vice versa. You have to keep going, and it's really hard to try to figure out.
So when and why did you guys begin working with alderwood? And talk about some of the works like Primary Colors, Steering Shallow Waters, and Island.
First of all, can I say that
Yeah.
that the one thing I think is weird about glass is that people think that they can make all their ideas out of that material. And I always have said to people and students, we try and use the material that's intrinsic to the idea. And not every idea translates with that material. You don't make every sculpture with all the same materials necessarily. So first of all, there was that. It wouldn't have made sense to, like, you mentioned primary colors. I think you just did, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so primary colors are large scale, overgrown paintbrushes that are, like in a container, like a metaphor for the creative act, a very recognizable image. And would it have made sense to make that, the paintbrush part would it have added to the idea to make that out of glass? No, not to me anyway. So that's just an example of, to me, intrinsic to the idea. How do you get to the idea the best way? And so the idea was to
see if we could stump me again.
yeah, right. Because Flora's going to tell this story that I did the drawings, and I said, I really want to make these big pieces where we talk about an image that everybody can relate to, about the intention of being creative.
Just before the artist starts to make his or her painting, the brush goes into the water and the water takes on that glow and the brush comes up and it hasn't started.
And Flora, so I showed her the drawings, and she picked up a 2x4 and walked over and put it inside a big clear vessel and said, "How's that going to work?"
Yeah,
because
it tipped it right over.
Yeah, so we had to figure out she had to figure out how to do it again with no nuts and bolts. And so we ended up, just as an example, making the wood handle, the large wood handle. We handmade them at first, and then what do you call it? Turned them.
Yeah.
We
got a lathe.
Yeah.
We went to the hardware store and bought a small lathe, and of course it was too small, so then I had to weld on an extension.
That's right.
For 5 foot, and then we made the length of the brush, and it was still too heavy, so I cut it in half and we routed it out, so it's like a sheet of paper, wood paper. It's so light. And then I put the collar on, and I was going to have a foundry make the part of the brush that's metal, and they were all too heavy, so I had to take a lathe and make the object and cover it with masking tape, and then open up the masking tape and clip it like I would sew and put it
Like
back
a pattern.
and then weld it all together.
So I mean, that's, the simple answer is would make sense in certain situations. The steering shallow waters and that kind of thing, again, would make sense to the conceptual idea. And I love wood and glass together. I mean, they really work together. First of all, I love wood. I mean, we're surrounded by woods everywhere. And the texture of it seems to work well with, sometimes we really are trying to take away the beauty of the glass, if you know what I mean. Glass is beautiful no matter what you do with it. And so I don't want to rely on the beauty of the glass. And so I like when it has a kind of counterpoint.
When it comes to certain works that we're working on, they were started because John Hallberg, who owned the property of Pilchuck, came to Joey and I. We were living there in the winter, and he has a little house down the road. He'd walk up and he said, I'm a woods guy, but alder has got to go. Campus looks it's like an untrimmed forest. Could you guys, since you're here, cut all those alders down around the buildings? And I'm cutting them down. He left, and I'm cutting them down, and I'm going, God, we could really make something fun out of this.
It's a very malleable wood, the softish wood. And
I started thinking about it, and Joey started doing drawings, and we did a whole lot of sculptures doing with the sticks. And then we took the sticks and made them bronze in some
And in some situations, we were asked to do outdoor sculptures, and you can't put wood outside. So what we realized that we could translate the wood pieces into bronze and then hand patina them, and you can't tell the difference between the dried alderwood and the bronze. And then that led us to the Seattle centerpiece, which was a thrilling opportunity, um, right below the Space Needle, and uh, kind of in a walkway that's kind of, I mean, I think like 7 million visitors go through there in a year, but there's something very quiet about this spot that we liked. And
It's right next door to the Garden of Glass.
it's right next door to the Chihuly Garden of Glass, and which made us feel kind of wonderful, because we haven't really spoken too much about it, but Dale's been such a big part of what we've done, and such a dear friend, and an important influence and mentor, and so it kind of made sense.
Describe your work, Water's Edge, which, as you mentioned, is installed on the Seattle Center campus.
It's called Water's Edge Years Round, and um, so much of the figurative steam bent wood pieces had to do with the figure in nature. And as we've spoken earlier, surrounded by fruit, or the harvest and that kind of thing. And we thought this location was one where the mix of, it used to, we kind of course, knowing us, we read about the location where the Seattle Center was first on, and it was a tree lined area, woods, but now it's a place where people come, and so we wanted to mix the two. So we had a figure. It's a steam bent two-legged figure, and to bring in the humanity or the humanness to it, we added a bucket image, which we've used before to illustrate the human contribution to, or the marriage of nature and humans. So, and out of the bucket comes sort of an illusion of water. It's really, bronze sticks falling over a round. And I'm sure you'll have a picture of that piece, but we're really trying to show the idea of, again, the seasonal thing, years round. We're at the water's edge. I mean, we're at the edge of the United States, basically, on water. And so something about the idea of a bucket giving up something that's man-made, but harvestable and growing. And like I said, it was really a highlight
Thrilling.
for us,
Yeah.
to have that there, and to be able to work on it, and to, again, figure out with the foundry, how do you do this weirdo thing that the foundry hadn't really done anything like it before. And you get it in little parts this big, and you have to put it all the bronze parts, you give them a figure of wood that's 12 feet tall, and they cut it up, and then embed it into plaster, and then get the bronze in there, and then break it up. And so it was an ordeal that was fascinating.
Yeah, the foundry did a great job.
So do the two of you still work with glass, or what are you working on now?
We still work with glass. We are right now trying to assemble a body of work that we'll be getting together for a next show.
We've been working on these pieces called the Botanicals. I think you'll have some pictures of them. And what they are is real flowers harvested at the epitome of their blossom and bloom, I guess you would say. And we try and present them as a portrait, sort of. Some people see it as realism. I see it more as
portraiture,
as a portrait, because let's say you have a tulip that's growing. We harvest it, we harvest the bulb, we have to take it all apart, every petal off, dry it, because the different parts of the flower dry in different lengths of time. And then we have to reassemble it, and we embed it in a material with glass on the outside of it. So, we are working with glass, but again, glass that's intrinsic to the idea. It makes sense to use flat glass at this point. And we've made a grouping of flowers. We just had some flowers at the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, and so this right now, one of the hard times to catch us now is that so much. If you could look around here, so much is blooming right now. We grow our own wildflowers and everything, so that we can then harvest them at the right time. And so it's like it's hard to leave because you don't want to, right now we're waiting for the peonies to bloom, and I don't want to go anyplace because I don't want to miss the bloom. So it's kind of fun to be that interactive with nature and to have that directly connected to our work.
When and where is the upcoming exhibition?
To be announced.
Okay. To be announced. TBA.
Right now they just opened a show, and again, because of the flowers, we didn't get there, at the Corning Glass Museum, called Tough Stuff.
Oh,
and
yes.
Like I don't know what, 30 women who worked from the 70s to the 80s, and Tammy Landis did a wonderful job at bringing together a body of work. I think there's a lot of work in it of women that like I said, worked in the 70s and 80s. So that's been somewhat of a preoccupation. I think we have like 10 pieces in the show.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'll get to see those at the Glass Art Society conference.
Oh yeah, now when is that?
That's the first week of June.
Yeah, so it's coming right up. Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't go to the opening, but we were planning on going in September. We thought it'd be a little quieter time to actually see the show.
Yes, yeah.
To the Krakow people, and a lot of people say, "What do you want to do, or what are you doing?" We just want to continue making work. I mean, that's what our thrill is, and our interest is, and our curiosities, lead us to what's the next one that we want to do. So that's really kind of where we're
Do you
headed.
still make things for Dale Chihuli's studio?
We haven't in the last few years. We have worked for Dale. I think I've worked for Dale off and on for 50 years. And Dale's studio was always moving at a record pace. And Dale always wanted me to work full time for him. But really, I only worked probably 12 days a year for him.
You're just on special projects. He'll bring us in.
Because his studio was so busy that Dale used to come to our studio so he could experiment. And then once we figured it out, then we would go to his studio to show the team how to do what we figured out. And then they did all that, and I could go back to figuring out our work. So it worked out really well.
Anything with a drawing on it, though, we've made. And I don't think we have done anything for a couple of years, but stay in good touch. And again, I'll just say that, he was a great mentor and friend, and we value his friendship.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. He will take chances. As an artist, you have to take chances.
I wanted to talk to you about sort of the state of things in the world of glass, in the world at large, but working together to share information to help all boats rise was a hallmark of the studio glass movement. Talk about that and how it makes you feel to see and be a part of the world we live in now, where that isn't so much a working philosophy. Does the glass world remain immune to the everyone for him or herself philosophy of art and life, do you think?
If a group of students went to Pilchuck from different countries and they were all living there and working there, things would still be opened. I think that everybody nowadays is trying to survive. If they have their own little studio, they're trying to figure out how to work and make a living, because things have gotten more and more expensive. Even glass is like doubled or tripled in price. Powdered glass, gas, everything is so expensive. The beautiful part of in Seattle is we have a number of studios that people can go in and work in, so you don't have to have your own studio. What do you think?
Well, I think yes. I mean, to your specific question, I think the thing that's so unique about blowing glass is that you work in teams, and if you think about it, the teams are made up of individual artists who have their own passions, they have their own vision, their own pace, but somehow I just think that it started early with Dale, or it started early with Billy and with us, that when you get in there and you're working for somebody else, that's the most important thing at that moment. And I think that has pretty much stayed. I mean, if you look at all the different artists and you find out, oh, they're working for him and she's working with her. And so I do think that it's a very collaborative and open, and I don't know how you put it, but the
tide raises all boats.
the tide
Yes.
raises all boats. So I think that that's still pretty much the same. And I think that historically, you can't think of painters being the same way because they don't work in teams for the most part. Or I just think that this thing has been set that it's sort of
have to.
It's sort of the way it is, and in a good way. And you mentioned how the world is today. It's frightening, the world, and we don't have to get into that. But
Yeah.
but I do think that there's still sort of this, bubble that the teams can work out of, that it works to their benefit, the artist's benefit that they're working for. And I think that it's changed the glass blowing sector, or whatever you want to call it. Studio glass movement has evolved. If you go way back to the beginning of this interview, that and I don't mean this in any judgmental way, but that artists came to glass because it was an interesting thing to do, but they had experiences in a different artistic field, and now a person can just get into glass from the get-go. And I think that's changed it. I think that's changed the direction of what's made, and I think it's changed sort of the final art that's made. And whether it's good or bad, that's not for me to say, but it's really different.
Yeah.
If each of you could go back and give yourselves a piece of life advice early on, what would it be?
Explore, take some chances, go some places. I think being around other artists in a place like Pilchuck, maybe it's like a writers' conference. You get together with other writers and you talk about, you realize that really you might have some good ideas. It just takes a while for those ideas to come out.
And as you're saying that, it makes me think of the series of the paintbrush pieces, that the overall series is called Making Before Meaning. And I think that one thing that I would continually remind myself if I went back is that you find what your work is about in the making of it, I think. And a lot of times we would go a direction that I didn't really know where this was coming from.
Yes.
But it had meaning once I learned the meaning through the process of making. And I think that a lot of people don't think that way. But I just think that it's important to, the process is important to the end result, and the discovery of what you find. And so, my motto is making before meaning.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Out Your Glass. Many thanks to our sponsors, the Corning Museum of Glass, Wet Dog Glass, the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, and Chrysler Museum of Art's Perry Glass Studio. Stay tuned for more great episodes, including Murano Maestro, Davide Salvadori, and Matthew Saz. Follow Talking Out Your Glass podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Until next time, stay glassy.